Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Thank you again for joining me. My name's Alex. This is That CNFT Show, and I'm joined, very thankfully, to be joined for another creator interview today by CNFT Protege. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me. How are you today?
I'm doing amazing. Woke up in a little bit of a funk, low frequency vibe, and I hopped on a Twitter space and some cool characters who are on there. When you interact with them, you'll know the names, and I could say them now, like Shepherd, Bads, Nick Screens, Edens. They just helped me get back on the good frequency, the high frequency, right? ADHD vibes. That's really what it is. And I get an energy back from other people who care, and they care. So I'm doing amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like. I wish I could spend more time in Twitter Spaces, even if I just have it on while I'm doing dishes or getting ready for my day or whatever. There's always opportunities to hear about interesting people building interesting things. And like you said, everyone cares about this community. Everyone wants to be there to participate, to learn, to share what they have learned, and it's a really good place to be. So I'm glad that you were able to amp yourself up a little bit before you joined me today.
Yeah, I got the espresso vibes without the espresso.
Awesome. So we talked about this a little bit just now before I started recording, but we both wanted to address how we first interacted and how we met, so to speak, on Twitter. Do you want to lead that off?
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. Put it on me. I was on a raging rampage. It was, definitely the lack of that slow mode on Twitter, what we were talking about before. It was just one thing right after the other when CNFTs were just becoming a thing and CNFT.io was launching, right? And, to be blunt, I'll be transparent, really like in the weeds with it. I applied with my own project. I was very brand new, but I'm an art student, I'm an artist, and I know that I can do CNFT art, right? And I'm like, wow, ooh, this seems like a platform for the people. And I myself misinterpreted what they were doing and how they were setting themselves up for. So, and I think they're still figuring themselves out now since, right? And I've come to learn a lot of things since. So there's a complexities in this, right? There's a growing aspect. But at that time, I applied, I got denied, and, that left a bad taste in my mouth for real. But mostly specifically about how the interaction after that was in trying to get some sort of customer or feedback or conversation started through Twitter and or the GitHub and whatnot, and it just didn't exist. So then I started posting things that I saw as issues, and they're issues that were affecting me actually. So it's not just things that I was like searching for. It's when in interacting with them, I pointed out certain things that would harm actually my project because it wasn't fully fledged out at the time, right? And so you saw my videos and you're like, whoa, what's going on? And then there wasn't this slow mode, right? We were just back and forth, TikTok, we were just tip-tapping on the keyboard. But then we kind of took a breath, and then we, DM'd each other, talked in the background, and had a good conversation, because the core of it is trying to make Cardano, CNFTs, this space better. We don't want to fight. We want to grow from this, right? And so, yes, we get emotional and we bring that into this, but that's because we're super passionate and super caring. All of this realm that we are trying to figure out still too, right? But, I know I can monologue like that, right? The ADHD life. But specifically, one of those issues that I have is with the verification process, really. So like, you can still have your stuff seen on the marketplace. But as I just DM'd you, doesn't mean it's true, doesn't mean it's real. So like
Right.
I have a piece that's been up for months now, Cardano Pink Mon Key, right? Mon for French, as in my key, right? And it has the little verification symbol next to it. Pictures. I'm not pictures. I am CNFT protege. But that then leads into a problem, bigger issue realm of, wait a second. How do we know these other projects are actually verified? Are they actually the real thing? The only way you really know is if you're minting and in the weeds and actually using a wallet to get that piece of art. That's the real only way to make sure you get a piece.
Well, and even then, we've seen problems with people, fake mods posting fake addresses, etc. But I just want to address for my part about our like you said, our back and forth on Twitter. That was at a time where CNFT.io was still working through, they've had tons of issues. It's not as bad as when I started. Like I started buying and selling on their platform, I think right around the end of August. And obviously it's gotten leaps and bounds better, but everyone's had their problems with that platform, particularly if you're a project creator looking to get verified. And your particular issue that you had put a piece up that was appearing as verified under a different project, I had not seen that before anywhere. And I didn't understand at the moment the magnitude of what you were getting at and what you were talking about. And I had seen, to be honest, I just thought at first glance, I just thought you were being kind of whiny because we see projects be whiny about not getting verified. And like we talked about, I would send a tweet and then you would respond 1 minute later and I'd be like, I'm going to show him. And it was actually one of the first times, like I didn't use Twitter a lot before I got into CNFTs. And it was actually one of the first times I've ever been in like a back and forth like that, where a slow mode, where if I had waited 5 minutes in between tweets or in between responses, I would have just been like, why am I getting bent out of shape out of it? We can talk about this and remain calm. And I said this a minute ago to you off air, but I want to say this on the air too, is that thank you for being the first person to reach out. You DM'd me and said, hey, sorry, I didn't mean to be disrespectful. I was able to say the same thing. And we both came to an agreement that we were really passionate about this. And that's why we get kind of bent out of shape. So I'm glad we've moved on from that and come to an understanding. So now that we're into, you and I just talked about a couple of prominent examples just this week of projects doing a rug pull, getting out of there, shutting down Twitter, shutting down Discord. What are some of the problems you see with a policy ID only verification system? And do we need an identity? Do we need like someone to vouch for projects before we consider them truly verified?
So that's a very touchy way. I'm emotional just thinking about that. In terms of the verification process or a second identity to do so, there are different ways that we tend to think of that we automatically allow ourselves to get attached to, and think that just because there's the system to verify something, that it must be true and all. And I'm talking about in respect to the community, in a human form, team, right? Or technological sense, right? So, my basic understanding is that, for example, Fancy Foxes, right? That's one of the rug pulls that's got the Twitter spaces shaking because they were really, really, really connected to the Cardano community Twitter spaces teams that run a lot of the spaces. And
Yeah, he had been on mine.
It
He had
even
been in
calmed
mine
him down.
two or three times and talked about his project and shown us builds of
Yeah.
what he was working on and everything.
He was also verifying projects too, and he just disappeared. And then, so in that human element, that's the emotional trauma that's really shaking the spaces. And then there's the technological aspect where there's systems to do so, but even they can fail in the sense that either it can have a bias subconsciously imprinted into it and or be selective. And so it's a tricky process, and it's not one that I have an answer for entirely. All I know is the real thing that you want to be doing when getting into a project is definitely see what they're currently doing, if they're meeting that, and when you're investing or going along for the ride, be happy with what is, you yourself need to feel happy with what is being handed out, given, and produced, the results that are here today, not the season 2 that comes out next year. Then what you're doing is speculating with that, or taking
Right. Not the game, not the SPO, not the DAO,
right.
all that stuff, right?
You have to see what is actually happening and believe in that. And you can do that by going onto Twitter, going onto their web pages, interacting with the community, talking. And again, still, that's not enough, right? You're still taking a risk. And so, if IOHK, Charles, creates a validation, I don't have the term for it right now, I'm sorry, blanking on it, but there is a verification process through them to say, hey, this is safe, this is not well graded, this is probably risky. There still is some inherent bias to that, but that's at a human level interaction. But at the same time, I would myself definitely trust it compared to anything else that's out there right now from them, if that makes sense, because just to be fair. But at the same time, I am still going to go in and do a lot of research and a lot of in the weeds, getting to know what I'm getting into. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
and to be honest, I don't think I agree that it needs to be IOHK or it needs to be some centralized body.
mm-hmm.
I think one of the solutions that I've seen this week is I think it was Cosmic Cuties, and they suggested, hey, what if we had in the same way that there's a DeFi alliance, what if there's a CNFT project alliance where project leaders, band together, share best practices, hold each other accountable, reveal their identity? Because I think, obviously one of the things that we all believe in crypto in general, Cardano more specifically, is decentralization. I don't think we can rely or should rely on IOHK or Charles Hoskinson to tell us what projects are safe or not. The community needs to come up with decentralized ways of helping educate one another, helping out, call out red flags, and teach new people as they come into the space what to look for.
The amount of brainstorming and creation of the ideas in the community, in the Twitter spaces, is incredible. Mm-hmm. So I do like what I want to emphasize or clarify what I was saying earlier, which I agree with you. I think that it's something that helps. I don't think it's the end all be all with IOHK, right? And I truly believe from the brainstorming and all these immense, smart developers in the community, in the Twitter spaces, will find a better best practice in a decentralized fashion. I believe that can and will be reached. All I'm saying is, for right now, this is something that helps those who are new not get rug pulled or hurt as bad. And it's just more, again, just helping on board those who want to go beyond the coin, or I don't know if I can say the words, but just the exchanges, right? When they onboard and get a wallet, when they onboard and want to really do more, be more. Because I'll be honest, like for me, I started just doing art coming into Cardano spaces, right? Twitter. Once I got beyond the exchanges and really wanted to get involved with the community, it was through art. And then it became something more, which is my CNFT protege SPO project. But it was only through, learning and then taking the natural flow baby steps. I was talking with Alfred. He's a stake pool operator for hotel stake pools.
Yeah, yeah.
We are
in Barcelona, right?
Yeah, hotel, yeah. He owns a hotel there too, Ginebra boutique hotel, and he's also a co-founder, founding NFTHubs.io. I just partnered with them. But they came to me because they like what I'm doing, and they can see that I've put in a lot of effort and work over the months to create something. But the point of it is, through hard work and dedication and just being real, authentic, and natural in the space, that will go a long way, and people will want to be a part of whatever you're creating, because it becomes a movement, right? And I hope that still blends with the conversation. I can take things,
Well, I want to get to your art project, but one more thing about community and trust and Twitter Spaces in particular. This is one of the reasons why I show up to them as often as I can, and we host our own every week. Is that I've learned more from a 10 minutes of devs and project leads talking to us in real language about their project than reading their white paper, visiting a website, looking at the art. Every week that we host these things, I hear from somebody who's building something interesting, who's doing something in a new way, who has different ideas about how to evolve the space, that I didn't get from just looking at their Twitter profile or seeing their profile pic. So you're right. I think the more time, I think that if you want to be trusted as a project, one of the best ways you can do it is get your voice out there, speak like a real human being, and tell people what you're building and what you want to do.
There's so much I can capitalize on what you just said, because I've been here just listening and taking it all in these spaces. There's, core developers of Cardano, Jeremy as one of them from IHK, who come in. And then there's also Lars, who's in Cardano over coffee yesterday. But they come into these spaces, and there's no YouTube edit or YouTube pause or anything that requires a wait and see, and then you can watch aspect. It is right there, right then. And they come in with such a fierce energy, and they'll spend an hour or two just talking about info dumping, their passion about Cardano and all the projects to come. And not just the projects, it's the capability and the capacity and the potential of Cardano that it's just so much too much to put in, a 10-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute video on YouTube. But they come in there and just give you all the dirty details. And it's just like mind blowing. And then again, also, I just put out a piece of art for an auction with Annette and her project. It was a few weeks back. It was a spin-off of that. Excuse me. It was a second auction. I was a part of hers, but it was kind of like, running off of those vibes, good vibes from the community. And the point is, there was a piece that I put in an auction, and we were 99% there in terms of coding it, getting the metadata right, because everything I make is augmented reality, virtual reality compatible. It's 3D objects, right? But we didn't know how to kind of make it show up on pool.pm on the website. And this other character from the community, he was also doing what we're doing with different art style, Nisse, Nisse. I just Googled him, searched up his name, said, "Hey, bro, we need some help." In like less than 5 minutes, he gave us that magic little piece of information and we got it out into, the space. And it's that kind of relationship that we didn't even have to pay him or anything. He was just so happy to be a part of it and help, and again, that goes back to being in the spaces when you're just actually interacting. You're not alone. The people there want you to succeed. And I hope that kind of still stayed in line.
No, it's a really good example, and I've seen that lots of times too. Is that no one comes in and talks about the project and just goes, "Yeah, I'm going to do this myself, and you guys, if you need anything, just buy it if you want it." But like everyone comes in and says, "Hey, I'm doing this. I'm open to suggestions about how to do it better, and if I'm doing something that someone else wants to learn about, shoot me a DM. We'll talk about it. We'll figure it out together." Because it's not a zero-sum game. Like if you build a successful project, that doesn't mean that my project is not going to be successful if we're both building something that adds value to the community.
Right.
So you brought up a couple of things there about what you're doing with SPOs and what you're doing with your art project. Why don't you tell me a little bit about how you got into digital art and lead that into what you're building for stake pools?
All right, I'll give you the short, sweet version of it. The year is 2011. No, I've always had a passion for it, art, right? And so I started 3D art back then in high school, but due to lingering effects of the recession, went into the military for 8 years and put a pause on that, right? And then got out roughly 8-9 years later, diagnosed late in life with ADHD, learned that was my new superpower. Went to college, used the GI Bill to study law, and wasn't for me. So then I switched over to art as an art student. And I still didn't know about Cardano. That's what I'm trying to say is I was just actually figuring out that I wanted to go back into my passion, which is art. And then the pandemic hit. I got a few Pokemon cards here and there before the price spike and the inflation. And, I have bills too, right? I got to pay a mortgage off, and I sold them. And I had a little extra. And then my dad hits me up with crypto, and I did a little research before seeing what to invest in. And then I found out about Cardano being that blockchain, which I always say, it measures, well, I heard, and it resonated. And I like to repeat it. It measures 10, 20, 1,000 times, and then it cuts once, right? There are still complexities. There, it's a brand new economy, if you will, within it that's forming the marketplaces, the ecosystem. So unlike Ethereum that's had 4 or 5, multiple years, right? The party's just getting started. And so I'm like, oh, okay, I've done enough research on how it works. I want to invest in it. And I feel like I can be potentially a part of this, investing wise, right? Then I learned about the Twitter space, Twitter SPOs specifically. And I researched about each profile, each one, and because then I was trying to figure out how to stake it. I wanted to stake my ADA. And this is what I'm trying to say is this is the natural flow of things, right? This is kind of like, I'm betting there's hundreds of other people who can relate in terms of going from exchanges to staking, Twitter, learning, and then becoming a part of the community. And so since I'm still trying to shake the rust off with 3D art, something that I noticed that was kind of like lacking, definitely needing, was art, the human element, the emotional element, that when you create something and you give it and people run with it, you become bonded to, on a level where it just becomes a part of your family. It becomes a part of you, right? And so now, after like roughly 40 stake pools later, I started off with, I believe, OpNet in terms of creating art, right? And then Retro, and then Aussie Pool. None of them ever said no to me whenever I made something or asked if I could make something for them. And over the span of 9 months, I created a craft. I got better at my crafts rather, right? I'm not saying I'm a master of anything, right? What I'm saying is, thanks to each person always being open to me and wanting to communicate and wanting to like interact with me, I was able to become so much more of an artist that I ever was before, that I ever thought I could be. And I found my style as an artist. That's huge, right? Finding, when you find what you're good at and how you want to be presented and seen, that's everything. So then, excuse me, drink of water.
So why don't you tell me about that first piece, or that first interaction that you had? How did you approach an SPO? How did you decide what to make? What was the communication like in that kind of first experience?
It was really just me saying hi, and here's something that I saw from you that I saw from their logo, I saw from their theme, I saw what they were trying to market themselves as, see what they were trying to be aesthetically attached to, right? And so I'm like, I wonder if I can recreate that and practice that with my own skills and get better as a 3D artist, right? So then I went ahead and, tried to make something. And I just sent you a DM of what that very first piece was. It looks horrible. It looks like a block that was cut into cheese.
I'm going to put it on the screen in post, so we'll all see what it looks like.
And so, but the point is like from there, then it got better in terms of presentation style and the quality, right? And I didn't know it then, right? But this was in part art therapy for me, plus also art training. But for them, when this actually shifted into becoming the CNFT SPO project, right? It became a way to highlight and spotlight each stake pool operator and their stake pool. And then what really got them to connect with it is that at its core for them, it's a way of marketing and advertising, plus also connecting with their delegators, connecting with their stake pool community, those who entrusted their ADA to that stake pool. Because this field of staking, the dynamics of it is always changing, the landscape. And the hardest thing for them is trying to keep their delegators, because we have had and we've seen things with Meld or Sunday Swap, right? Yeah. And there's more to come. And what happens is these nice new shiny little projects come and take away their delegators that these operators have tried so hard to acquire, right? And they want to keep. And so what now happens is everything that I make is 3D, like I said, right? But also it's made into a file size that's then they can distribute to their delegators as rewards in airdrops. So that's when it started to really get exciting, because there was this interactive, immersive part of the project. And again, we are Cardano, right? We are not Ethereum in the sense of how we operate the blockchain, right? We have the nodes, right? We don't have, like Ethereum, we don't have GPUs, graphics cards, which are also, limited by supply and demand. And, yes, the more graphics cards, the better technically. But now Ethereum is deflating, but that's a separate topic. Cardano is what it is, will always be, right? We do not deflate, we do not inflate with the tokenomics. But what really matters is that we have the stake pool operators and a decentralized pool of that, right? So anywhere from a pool having 1,000 ADA committed to it, or anywhere above in 15 million and up, right? It goes way up. You want to have a range there. You want to have more of that community aspect, because that's that human element to it too, right? And it decentralizes the community. It's not stuck with just centralized corporate aspects, right? Elements. It is a people's blockchain. And so it really matters in helping them survive, right? Because again, they are real people operators, behind their face, behind these profiles that you might see on Twitter and whatnot. And that's why I also really connected with them, because I'm like, wait a second, stake pool operators are the brain, like they're the cells of the whole ecosystem. They make sure that we're alive and running and decentralized. Again, I know I keep saying those words over and over, but they're powerful words, right? It's very important to get that across, right? And so at this point with the project, I mentioned earlier Alfred and NFTHubs.io. I just partnered with them, and it was all natural and organic in the sense that because of the work that I've done, and then I also requested permission from each and every stake pool operator that I've worked with in this collaboration with NFTHubs.io to then share the content, the art that I made over there, that now they're going to show off that art in a collection fashion, right, in a marketplace. That's coming in later, 2022. And it's so, I really want to get this across, where the bond, the emotional bond, the appreciation of each operator in what I'm doing, they really care. And they really want to work with me because they understand that I care too. And the only reason this project exists is because, just like the Cardano blockchain and them existing, is because each person validated their existence and appreciated their existence. And so, like for me in this project, this project would not exist. This network effect would not exist if there wasn't each and every one of them believing in me, or rather I should say the pro SPO project, right? And it goes back to what we were saying a little ways back, where when you interact with the community, they will make sure that you succeed too. They believe in you. They want you to succeed. They'll take care of you. They'll help you. I hope I'm making sense with that.
Oh, of course. And I think it's like we were talking about earlier. We all want to lift up people who are adding value to the ecosystem. And if your contribution is running a stake pool, that's obviously a lot of work to contribute to the stability and the security and the safety of the network. But I think what you're doing that's so interesting is helping add stability and safety and decentralization to the network by providing art value and, like you said, human and emotional value to stake pool operators so that they can differentiate themselves and offer something to their delegators that some of the big multi-pool operators, that's like putting your money in a bank, right? You don't know anyone at the bank. You don't talk to anyone at the bank. The only difference is you're getting a better return than what the banks are offering. But like I said, you're offering value in that human interaction and that emotional piece, where if you stake with one of the SPOs that you're working with, you get a piece of art, you can get rewarded with that. So I think it's a really interesting way to combine art, the human side of art, with the kind of technical and decentralized rationale for why we have stake pools and why we're a proof of stake blockchain.
I was talking to Coins, or in a Twitter space, and Coins, COINZ, DM'd me telling me that there are 500 stake pool operators roughly, that are set up for success. And then there are, in total, 3,000 roughly stake pools, right? And so what does that mean? There's 2,500. I didn't know this at the time, but there's this 2,500 that are not set up for success, that are just starting or trying to get with the program and whatnot, right? Stay alive and not retire. And so you see, unknowingly, there's this vacuum of opportunity and potential to support and help and make sure that that other 2,500 succeed. I didn't know that at the time, and it blew my mind. I learned about this like a few days ago from Coins. And so a part, in terms, as me, the artist, the creator of each piece, my big picture plan, right, as we grow, is to help connect other independent artists, and maybe I hire them in Ada, I don't know, but the project does, and connect them with SPOs to create them, and they both help each other out and create art, CNFT art, right? And then it breeds more of that human emotion, human element, and there's more success potentially, right? And so at least from the sales of my CNFTs, and especially with the marketplace, of course, the percentage of the sales go back to the SPO operators, especially the ones that have less than $100,000 ADA, in their pools, but it'll help sustain them and keep them afloat and going and moving. Plus also expand the project. But in one of these Twitter spaces, I've had interactions where people are kind of jaded. They're hurt that they've tried and tried and tried for I don't know how long, but that network effect never happened or occurred for them. Sometimes that happens, but I can tell you there's a power in helping. There's a power in giving. And I can't tell you when, but at some point, the floor just shatters beneath you, and it's a roller coaster of a feeling where there's now this interaction of a back and forth of giving and helping. And again, that network effect explodes, and it takes off, and you will find success. But just again, what I'm trying to say is never give up. But there's a power in helping and giving. I know that squirrel brain of mine. I can go and talk and take.
So you got me thinking in a couple of directions here. But one of the things that I wanted to ask is, even with network effects, you personally cannot build 2,500 pieces to help every single stake pool. So to get from where we are now to where you have a network set up where you're lifting up all these different projects that might be able to benefit from a project like this, what are your plans, and how are you growing your project, and how are you growing your network in order to help and bring more people on board?
Twitter Spaces, the community. It's as simple as that. We have no shortage of artists in the CNFT world, right? And there are artists that they're very successful and they have their projects, and there are others who are just starting out. And there are also other projects on Cardano, like I might be butchering the name, but Cardano Jobs. And it's an application where you can go and list your talents, your abilities on there, and those who want to be hired and can be and want to be, right? In ADA, paid in ADA as a form of income. It's that stable, right? And so as far as for my approach, right, with this project, here's what I can tell you. Given what's been occurring just now in this space, my deliverables, right? That's what I really want to target right now. What am I actually producing and giving to this space? At this point, in this project, it's me and my collaboration with NFTHubs.io. And that I have already created roughly 30 agreements with stake pool operators to join in this collaboration, right? Where the sales and the limited supply of each art collection, again, a percentage goes back to the devs of NFTHubs.io and their charities. A percentage goes back, of course, to the SPOs, and a percentage goes back to the project. And that's where that profit aspect comes in, right? And so as we grow with that, plus also other sales of CNFTs, my private collection, it grows the project's treasury, our little pool, if you will. And again, through just bonding and connecting and a fierce loyalty to the community and just talking and making these connections, there is still, you can still, in the 1950s and or around that time period, there were those who went knocking door to door, right? Hi, here's my sales pitch. That still exists today. but you're not going to see that in person. You're not going to see that out in the physical world, but it definitely still exists in the virtual world. So when I went to each and every staple operator and said, knock, 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 hi, can we do something together? And they said, sure. I had a good pitch. I had a genuine from the heart pitch. And the same thing applies when it goes to growing the project and interacting with those who want to grow with you. And I've already got a nice little community growing of those like-minded people wanting to interact with it. So the basic but most important answer to this is community, right? In terms of how I grow, how this grows. Because it started off with community. It started off with a understanding of how, if and when we come together, big things, great things can happen. You know, people will notice, right? Just like you. And I hope that kind of answered your question.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're right. Like we talked about earlier, talking in Twitter Spaces is a really good way to connect with people and give them a much better idea of what you're building and what you're working on. I think particularly partnering with, like you said, Alfred, and building a new platform where it's gonna start to build that network effect. When, like, you can't build the entire network by you personally being in every single Twitter space, right? Like that's you've got limited time and limited capacity to do that. But once you start building a network that's going to work for you, even during the times when you're not the one doing the work, I see what you mean. I think that's gonna really help you take off. Now, do you have any plans for building your own Discord or building other places for people to meet and talk about this work? What are you working on in terms of that?
Yes, in terms of the Discord aspect, NFTHubs.io, one of the developers from there, Tom, Twitter handle @Timonies. We are building a Discord right now, and making sure that it's decked out to allow for just creative thought related to this project. And again, in terms of the existence as of now, is mostly on Twitter Spaces, right? Because that's where a lot of the developers are, and that's where a lot of the new natural flow community members are coming in, right? So there's always a wave of people coming in, and there are different if you want to say shows, are talking hours dedicated for certain subjects, and communicating new projects, or how Cardano works. Those are definitely places where you can find and get plugged in and help others plug in with you. So, and again, this is a new actual development, if you will. There is this blending occurring between Discord and Twitter Spaces, right? Both are becoming equally important. It's not just Discords, right? But also there is a place for that and necessary. And so, yeah, does that help?
Yeah. Well, no, like I said, it's not necessarily the be all and end all, but it's a very common tool and a very common way for people to build community. And not everyone is able to be or wants to be seen or heard necessarily. And some people might not want to ask questions or appear as a speaker in a Twitter space. So I think that offering that other avenue for people to ask questions or become involved or connect with you is going to be important. But like you said, it's not necessarily the most important thing. And I just think the more avenues that you can give people to connect with what you're doing and learn about what you're building, and from that point, expand your reach, so to speak, that's just going to be another avenue for you to do that.
I'm always open to communicate with those who want to interact with me. So definitely I'll give you an email down in the below in the the bio, and people can send emails or communicate in that fashion, as well as the Discord link. And then again, I'm always available on Twitter. And if anybody just wants to talk, I'll, in a proper fashion, will be available for that. I have a soft space, right? Soft heart for the independents, for the small, just getting started operators and or artists, right? And collaborations, those are passionate, motivating opportunities that I'd never want to not have. And so actually, a funny thing is, or an interesting dynamic that's actually forming. There are other 3D artists who want to interact with me, collaborate as well in the spaces, and they're also forming Discords too. One of them, special shout out, Frog Dog. He talks about forming a guild in Pavia or other metaverses that are soon to come and all that stuff of 3D artists. And it's not just 3D artists, it's 3D builders. But as far as avenues to communicate with me, there will be the Discord, the email, and I'm always available on Twitter. And then NFThubs.io with the developers from there, they have an avenue to be reached for this as well, right? If you have other questions to those watching this, and that we can post in the below too. But I just thought I'd give a little shout out of that new dynamic, which is it's not always just an avenue where I will be, but people like me will be too, right? But specifically the project, I'll give you those channels too.
Awesome. Well, I thank you very much for taking the time today. I've been seeing what you've been building for, it's been a couple of months now that you've been popping up more and more. And I think the community, I think you're bringing a lot of value to the community, and we need to do more to support our SPOs, right? Like everyone needs to, whether it's delegating, if you can afford it, if you have enough to even participate in that way, or if you just want to throw them a follow on Twitter, interact with them, tell them that they're doing a good job, or listen to them if they're educating. So thank you for bringing value to the space in that way as well.
I'm humbled by it. I'm humbled by you. I'm humbled by all of this. It formed because it was something that there was a lack in, and people vibed with it. And so it became something. And there are so many other aspects of forming a project to target and hit a missing element that, whatever is your passion, not necessarily art, but something technical too, right? Or anything, you will and can find that niche available and to flourish it within Cardano. Because again, the party's just getting started. Mm-hmm. I just want to make sure that people will vibe with you when you're authentic. So again, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for this. I didn't think I'd ever be on this show. Like, this is amazing.
well, I'm glad we had this conversation, and I'm really excited to help do what I can to help push this out and get some more eyes on what you're doing, because like I said, I think it brings a lot of value. So thank you again for what you're doing.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'm sure you'll be hard at work or in lots of Twitter spaces and stuff. Thank you to all my viewers. This is pretty much going to go up unedited because it was a really good conversation. I'm basically just going to put some logos and Twitter handles on the screen, and then it'll be out. But I'll be very interested in watching what you're doing, and good luck to you going forward.
Thank you, sir. Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year to you. Thank you. I'll do my best to get this out before the stroke of midnight tomorrow night.
Amazing.
All right. Thanks a lot.